Welcome to the sixth and final episode of our Vendée Globe special series of the North Sails Loft 57 podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Enright, and today we have an unbelievable episode for you. I was lucky enough to speak to the winner of the Vendée Globe, Charlie Dalin. Next, I flipped the tables on North Sails president Ken Reed and get his take on this race and its impact on the world of sailing. Finally, I chatted to Guillaume Verdier, undoubtedly the most influential and consequential boat architect for the IMOCA class over the last few decades, and a designer extraordinaire. I don't know about you, but I've loved this edition of the Vendée Globe. A huge fleet of diverse characters has delivered stories galore, and records have tumbled, once again showing that this race can continue to captivate and inspire the masses. So let's get into it for the last time. It's only right that we kick off by speaking to the new Vendée Globe champion, Charlie Dalin. He came into the race carrying the burden of being favorite and blew everyone away, racing hard, fast, and consistently to the finish with a groundbreaking new solo record for circumnavigating the world. He's a gentleman and a scholar and a friend. Firstly, Charlie, congratulations on a beautiful victory in the Vendée Globe. You've now joined the elite ranks of French offshore sailors. How does that feel?
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, it feels pretty good. Like you said, all these big names, like François Gabard, Michel Desjoyaux, Armel Leclerc, and now I'm part of this very exclusive club. And that's a great feeling.
Yeah. And now that your feet are firmly back on land, how do you reflect on the, accomplishment? It's one thing to be part of this fraternity, but the accomplishment itself is magnificent. How do you feel about it?
First of all, that was a great feeling, great feeling of achievement, especially after the 2020 event, when I got the line honors, but I didn't win. Even though I never protested that was fair. That was a fair choice that Yannick Bestaven got compensation, but that was a bit of a unique situation. Crossing the finishing line first, then being the first sailor of the Vendée Globe on land, but not winning. That was very particular. And I think after the dust settled, after the for a few days, few weeks after the finish of the 2020 race, for me, I felt like, maybe a bit of frustration, not winning the race, only losing by 2.5 hours after 80 days at sea. And I told myself, what happened? Where did I lose these 2.5 hours? And every time I would wake up at night, I would start, thinking about all my maneuvers, my tactical choices, my strategy, and I started looking really, really hard on where I could have lost these 2.5 hours, and these 2.5 hours really fueled this second campaign, and every choice we could make in the boat design, in the preparation, sometimes you think, oh, maybe we're going a bit too far, doing this, maybe that's pushing a bit too much. And I said, well, if that gives us, maybe, you can lose the Vendée for 2.5 hours. So, we've got to push, we've got to push hard, push harder, push further the envelope, and that really fueled us in this second campaign. And also, I gained a lot of experience from this first Vendée Globe, and I learned a lot by myself, the way I managed the race regarding the sleep and everything. And I came back, with a much better boat, much better experience on this second edition for me, and really, and also fueled by this 2020 edition. And after this, it went pretty well, during the race. And but I only realized when I crossed the finish line, and that was such an amazing feeling, after so many years of hard work. The first campaign we started in 2018. That's almost like a 6-year effort into winning this race, and we managed to, that was great. Amazing feeling to rejoin with the team and celebrate with them, this achievement, and also this really great feeling of hard work that leads to a victory. And I'm sure you know what I mean, after you win in the ocean race.
Yeah, well, and you were certainly a part of that. Let's talk about the finish for a second. Emotions, no doubt. we're running high. Like, how is the experience of crossing the line and the amazing crowds and your family and friends and just everyone that's been a part of this experience? Because in single-handed sailing, you get all the attention, but there's a lot of people that support you. And how is that feeling at the finish?
The feeling was really amazing, and the stage was perfect.
Yeah.
There was the sunrise and the full moon on the other side, like a nice flat sea, offshore swell blowing from Les Sables, like maybe 10 to 12 knots of breeze. Very cold though.
Yeah.
was pretty much, it was literally a freezing temperature on the finish line, but I didn't care. And once again, the lesson I learned from my first Vendée were there, like once again in 2020, I thought I won the last afternoon of the race. I thought my main rival was Louis Burton, and I completely forgot about Yannick Bestaven at that stage. And the last afternoon, I thought the race was for me. I really thought I won, and I really didn't want to make that mistake this time around. Like the last couple of days before the finish, obviously your brain, wants to think about the finish line, and that's a natural thing. The brain wants project itself onto the finish line, and you're reunited with the family, the team, the sponsor, and everything. But every time my brain would wander into the future of this finish line, I would try to drag my brain back on board. Say, hey, focus, brain. We're not on the finish line yet. Try to concentrate. Concentrate on the final choices. Trying to avoid the cargo ships, the fishing boats, and try to make the right decision sailing into the Bay of Biscay. So every time my brain would wander into this finish line, I would say, "Hey, come back here. The finish. We're on unfinished business here. We need to bring this boat home." And I really try to not think about this finish line and really focus on the moment I was living and what I had to deal with at the very moment, and that I really allowed myself into this victory on my last final tack, my last port tack on the last maybe 5 minutes before crossing the finish line, and that was just great, crossing this finish line as the sun was rising, and like 6 years of hard work finally paying off. And my family there, my son and my wife jumping on board straight after the team, and the great feeling of reunion with the team as well. They were literally there, off during the 6 years of the campaign. Quite a lot of them, they were here already for the Aprilia campaign, and they were just, everyone was really happy, and I was really happy to give them their victory as well, to share their victory with them, because they're definitely part of it. And we spent a month in the US with a boat. We had 2 races, from France to New York and New York to France in June, and they didn't go home. They didn't take time off hardly, and they worked like in the marina near New York, every day for a month to get the boat ready for the race back, and they worked really hard during the summer refit, and I think they're the best of the world, and they definitely delivered an outstanding job, and that was great, really great winning with them. And I got a call from the French president as well.
Whoa!
Which was really, from Emmanuel Macron. It talked to me for we had a conversation for about 10 minutes, and that felt pretty unreal.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of my follow-up question. I mean, this event is enormous in France. I mean, how has your life changed? I mean, conversation with the president, I'm sure many media opportunities, like any celebrity encounters, like what's it been like? You're larger than life.
Yeah, for sure. Like what happened when you win the Vendée Globe is, you raise a trophy. That was a great moment as well. This trophy I couldn't raise 4 years ago, and straight away, like maybe 2 days after the finish, after greeting Johan Richomme and Sébastien Simon, the second and third finisher, we are headed up to Paris and had this big media tour, of all the big French national media, big TV, radio, and everything. And that was great experience, being on these big mainstream media shows, and And what was great is like they all followed, even from Paris, all this the Paris journalists that followed the race, closely, especially the one with kids, because the Vendée Globe is really big, with kids in France. All the schools that following the race. That's a great way to learn about geography, oceans, ocean preservation, and all this. And pretty much all the schools in France are following the Vendée Globe, and all the kids are really keen on all the sailors and the race. So I made quite a few of the kids journalists as well, which was pretty good. And that was a good media tour. And then you get quite a lot of opportunity, obviously. And it's definitely a before and after winning the Vendée Globe. Yeah.
All right, let's turn back to the race itself. I mean, so many factors come into play. Skill, tenacity, determination, a little bit of luck, but I'm a firm believer in making your own luck. But where do you think the real key to success lies? What does it take to win the Vendée Globe?
I think experience is key now. I think it's pretty much impossible now for a newbie to win. Obviously, you need a good boat. You need to make the right design choices in your boat. We try to make Massif as much like a versatile boat. Being able to sail fast is almost, any conditions. Maybe not necessarily the fastest in some, but, we wanted a fast boat overall. Mm-hmm. That's what I had with Apivia, and we try to replicate this with Massif and trying to improve the downwind, which was definitely the Achilles heel of Apivia, and we made big improvements on that side with Massif. And the team is key as well. You need the best guys in your team, the guys with experience that will know what systems will work, what system will not. And the team is important. You need a good sponsor as well. That's able to follow you for a long time. Apivia and Massif, they're in the same model society, shall I say? And even though the name changed, that was pretty much the same people from the Apivia campaign to the Massif campaign. And like a big a sponsor which is there and keen and willing to win is important too. And then during the race, you've got to make the right choices at the right moment, and when you break things, because you will break things, in the Vendée Globe, and so you need to. Your team and have to make the right choices and on what spares to bring as well. Every time I broke something in the race, either I could repair, I could replace. So I finished across the finish line with a boat which was literally at 100% of its potential, which is very important. And also I had to make this pretty bold move. I think in the Indian Ocean, which was definitely a game changer, and that was that enabled me to get a big lead on most of the competition. Like at this time, the fleet we faced this very big low pressure by the Kerguelen Island, and I decided to sail ahead and pretty much in the eye of the storm. Just right ahead of just on the east side of this big low pressure, and quite of my opposition decided to sail north of this low pressure. That was a pretty full on move. That was pretty much a no plan B move.
Yep.
So I'm glad that worked because the wind were pretty strong. Only a few 100 miles on my west. So, the boat had to stay in shape, I had to sail, I had to keep sailing fast to avoid, the big side, the strong edge of the low pressure, but it all worked pretty well. And I sailed off this low pressure with Sébastien Simon with a big lead on everyone. So that was a very important move in the race.
Hey, this is a North Sails podcast. You haven't talked about the sails. How did your sails hold up? Were you happy with everything? You set a world record. I mean, you must be pretty pleased.
Yeah. Well, the record is a cherry on the cake, really. Because like the Johan Richomme, who came second, finished second, won. Like he broke the record as well, but in the end, I'm the only name on the record, so I was really focusing on winning, and then that was really a cherry on the cake. But I think I sailed around the world almost at 18 knots average, which is pretty fast
Yeah.
for a 60-foot monohull single-handed. So yeah, that was the boat was sailing. We were sailing fast almost all the time. We had great weather. The weather in the Southern Atlantic was great, and my South Atlantic was my South. My roaring 40s were great as well. All the Indian Ocean section plus Pacific were great. I nearly didn't encounter a storm apart from the one in the Indian Ocean, and yeah, like the loads on everything they're just massive on IMOCAs now. With the extra power given by the falls. Like the load on the sheets, the loads on the sails, and you need confidence on your sails. And I didn't have any wipeout apart from a couple of roaches. No, maybe not. Maybe even more than a couple, but about a few broaches. I didn't have I didn't do any Chinese jibe, for example, or anything like this. But yeah, you need confidence in yourselves for sure. And yeah, I had the confidence on ourselves. You need to be confident in your boats, but in yourselves as well. I was confident, even though I had to repair one of my sails, which was a key sail for the southern leg of the race.
Mm-hmm.
And but luckily, I managed to repair in about 36 hours of time. And after the repair, I was able to use the sail like before. So that saved my race, being able to repair that sail, and I crossed the finish line with a full set of usable sail. And yeah, the main is in great shape. J2 as well. J0 as well. MH02. Yeah, most of my sails are, apart from the throw, where I had to repair, all the rest of the sails were in really good shape after the finish line. And yeah, that's important. You don't have that many sails on IMOCAs now. Only 8 in total, including the storm jib and the mainsail. So yeah, you sails have to be able to sail in a very lot of different conditions, and you have to be strong, because sometimes it's for 1 hour and 1 hour in a row, and yeah, as it fails, you don't have someone constantly watching on the sails like you can do on a fully crewed event. So yeah, they have to be strong, and they were. So yeah, pretty happy with my sail wardrobe.
There probably isn't a better test of sails than the Vendée Globe. They have to be durable and they have to perform. I'm just thinking about 18 knots. I think when we did the transatlantic from Newport to Aarhus, I think we averaged, if I'm not mistaken, 22.7 knots, which is also
that was very fast.
It was pretty wild. We got a little lucky with some flat water, but it certainly wasn't very flat on the top of Scotland. But a good chunk of the trip was pretty good. But anyway, you talk about some of these broaches. You talk about entering the low pressure in the Southern Ocean. What's life like on a foiling racing boat down there?
Once again, for my first Vendée experience, we did quite a lot of work on the ergonomics of the boat. Mm-hmm. My living areas after the cockpit, and we had this molded to my body carbon with a rally, like of a racing car seat on suspensions on the port side of the living area, and maybe like a foot and a half to my right, I had my bank. We did quite a lot of work with a French matrice company, with a R&D department of a French matrice company, and yeah, we did like 3 or 4 versions of this matrice, and with different type of foam, and yeah, everything was really compact. The cockpit is tiny. Compared to 11th hour, the IMOCA 11th hour racing, my cockpit is like, is maybe half the size, and probably even less. And what I wanted is a cockpit very small, so you could easily walk from one area to another, and so not waste energy moving in a boat. And I could go from my bunk to my nav station in one move, and that was great energy saver, and that enabled me to being able to rest easily. I could push hard and rest well, and yeah, life on board is bumpy, it's loud, Sometimes it's hot when you're around the equator. Sometimes it's freezing when you are in the southern ocean, and yeah, and you're actually happy when when you get a bit of light wind sailing. You're just really happy, after Rio, before sailing into the southeast trade winds, at this low pressure to tackle, and I was at this like dead flat water, warm weather, and I was like, well, we're not moving fast, but that's just great.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. That's okay. I don't mind. We're sailing at 10 knots, but I don't care. It's just great. I can sleep. There's no noise in the boat, no, no slamming, nothing. And yeah, after it took me 23 days to sail from Cape of Good Hope to Cape Horn, and yeah, and I was just bumpy all the time, and yeah, big deceleration sometimes, and yeah, and it's like constant stress and constant slamming, and yeah, like in the South Atlantic, we average near about, I think I averaged almost 26 knots in 24 hours, and yeah, and the record was beaten with your old boat, and the 24-hour record, and yeah, that was just crazy fast, and yeah, and quite hard to get some rest, and the race is long, and so yeah, you've got to find a balance between going fast and pacing somehow yourself, being able to last for the length of the race, and you're going to have to do some repairs at some point as well. You don't know what, you don't know when, so you need this you always need a bit of buffer, of sleep buffer, shall I say, because you need to be able to sometimes you have to start a repair as soon as you've got a problem, so you always have to have a bit of sleep cushion, shall I say, to being able to start the repair, and that might last 3-4 hours straight away, so you can't sail on the edge like you would do sleep-wise, like you would do on a figure race.
I mean, with all the highs, all the lows, I mean, are you driven to do this again? Do you want to defend your title, go faster, or do you feel like you've served your time? Are you looking at 3 big hulls in your future? What's the plan?
I'm thinking of it. I'm thinking about the Vendée. There's lots of opportunity there, but yeah, Vendée, yeah, why not? It's a great class. There's lots of loads of great skippers, lots of big teams. It's a very dynamic class at the moment, and so yeah, IMOCA is a very attractive class. I think it's a class to be at the moment. And but yeah, there's also like the All Team is a great class as well. With no limit at all, and boats that sails above 50 knots now sometimes. So yeah, so there's quite a lot of opportunity out there. But yeah, Vendée, I could see myself doing another Vendée. We'll see. But
you're a glutton for punishment. Certainly, the old teams are a lot more comfortable. But if you want to sail against 40 of the best sailors in the world, the Vendée is the place to be. But how about the short term, the medium term? What's next for Charlie Dalin?
Well, the boat is quite a few meters away from me in the shed, getting a nice refit after the Vendée. We should be launching in about a month's time, and we've got a race around Britain and Ireland to start with, fully crewed, which is good.
Nice.
I enjoy single-headed sailing, but after Vendée Globe, a fully crewed race is very welcome. So I'm looking forward to having some people on board to maneuver with me.
To share the pain.
That'd be good. And yeah, it's gonna be great. And then might do the Fastnet race again. I won the last edition. I won the 2 last editions actually, in the IMOCA class and last time IMOCA class and line orders. So yeah, I really like this race, and yeah, I might. We see, maybe we'll do it again. And at the end of the year, we've got the Transat Café L'Or from ex-Jacques Vabre that you know pretty well, from Le Havre to Martinique in West Indies, and next year the big one of the, maybe the second biggest sailing event in France, which is called Route du Rhum, from Saint-Malo to Guadeloupe, which is single-handed. And yeah, last time I finished second with I finished 2 hours behind Thomas Rouillon. So yeah, that's probably my biggest goal in the next 2 years, trying to win the Route Durham next year.
Cool. Very, very good. Very, very interesting. Well, you sound very busy, which doesn't surprise me at all. Really appreciate you making the time to chat with us here on this final episode of what's been, a very fun podcast, certainly for me to be a part of, kind of reliving the race from afar. But yeah, just an absolute amazing experience, amazing accomplishment. Super proud of you. Not surprised for sure. And I just wish you all the best in the future. And it was great to chat. Charlie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlie.
Congratulations, Charlie. Thoroughly deserved. Next up, I wanted a global perspective, so went to a true voice of sailing. Ken Reed may have sailed around the world multiple times and broken multiple speed records, but he's always been helping a crew as a skipper. So it was great to hear how he sees this iconic solo race. And as ever with Ken, he brings his wealth of experience and knowledge with charm and charisma. He should work in TV or something. Here's Kenny Reed. All right, Ken, thanks for joining us. The shoe is now on the other foot. You have gone from host to guest. How does that feel?
What did they say? The student is now the teacher? Is that the way that works?
Some Daniel's son Miyagi reference in there. Okay, I like it. Okay, you have been around the world a couple times in a crewed configuration, as have I. You think you could have ever done it alone?
I would love to have had the cojones and the kind of the technical wherewithal to do it, but I never did. It's kind of why I always said I couldn't leave the dock without Casey Smith, right? Because Casey kept the boat in one piece, and like we always joked, we all tried to break it, and Casey knew how to fix it, whether it was electronic, whether it was boat building. Spent plenty of time helping glue some sails back together again, going around the world, but that was about as far from my technical experience really went. So a long answer to your question is I would have loved to, but I just didn't have it in me, to be honest.
And not because you asked, but I'll follow up by answering the question myself. I kind of would like to do it, and that's probably not practical because I got into the shorthanded game like a little bit late and learned more in the last probably 5 years than I had in the first 35 years of my sailing career. But it's just probably a little too late for me, and probably for some of the same reasons that you just outlined. But,
like if you have a small fire or the electronics go out or something without help, could you fix that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could out of like bare necessity, but you learn through experience, and to date probably just don't have enough to get it going in the time frame that would be required.
Yeah.
But I mean, these solo sailors, let's face it. I mean, as the kids say, they're just built different. I don't know if you can see the air quotes or not, but have you ever sailed with any of these Vendée guys in your crewed career?
That's a good question. I don't think so, but I did. We have both spent. I believe you're going to talk to him later. A lot of time with our friend Guillaume Verdier, and when Guillaume built or designed, Guillaume and the VPLP all designed Comanche. We talked a lot about the learning curve of what it was going to take to sail a boat like Comanche, and they were pushing really hard to get these single-handed people on the boat. And of course, we were just coming out of 2 Volvos, and we thought we thought this was going to be a big Volvo boat. Well, the fact is we were both right. Could we have used a bit of that kind of single-handed experience? We probably, our learning curve would have been a little quicker. But at the same time, there was stuff that we understood from a crewed and how to tame the beast standpoint and how to push it to 100% or as close to 100% as you possibly could. We probably had that on top of a Vendée guy, but a Vendée guy would have taught us to heel the boat way over earlier than we ever figured it out. And a lot of kind of simple things. It just comes from 8 billion miles on these wide boats. So I've gotten to know some of them I've talked to a bunch about sail inventories and things like that. I think you called it. It's just a different breed. But I also believe that if you're going to be really good at this these days, and I tell kids groups all the time, you got to grow up as an engineer or some sort of engineering background to understand this, because it's too complex now. I mean, you learned with the foiling world that you were involved with, or semi-foiling world. It's a different game now. And I think you have to study some sort of technical background. Isn't Charlie a trained designer?
Charlie is a trained naval architect. He went to University of Southampton. So, right. I mean, this day and age, if you change one thing, the knock-on effects of that change with everything else are just astronomical. So, like, having some sort of engineering background, I think, is essential to finding success on these platforms. But, you know, as crazy as these guys and girls may be, there's a ton of them out there. I mean, there's 40 boats on the Vendée starting line. Like, what do you think the class is doing right?
Well, fame and fortune, the ability to get fame and fortune is obviously a driver for some. I think the social media thing has changed the game a lot. I did an interview a while back, and it was like, it wasn't how you were doing in the race. One of the questions was based on how many clicks a person had, or how many followers a person had. That kind of scares me a little bit. Like, it still should be about winning. Or I guess, let me rephrase. When you leave the dock, you should understand, is this about winning? Is this about placing? Or is this about kind of the adventure? And all single-handed sailors have one of those three in mind when they leave the dock. I just find it hard that the fame and fortune, or at least your self-worth, is now also being relegated to clicks and followers. That kind of scares me a little bit. I don't think that's really, but maybe I'm just showing my age.
Yeah, maybe. But in other ways, it is quantitative. I mean, it is very measurable. Social media aside, perhaps, or maybe what you're about to answer is one of the most chronicled parts of the entire race. But, like, what surprised you the most about this Vendée Globe?
Maybe the weather and the ability. These boats have become, if you can sail these boats at darn close to max speed, as I'm sure you found out, you're controlling the weather now in these races far more than the weather is controlling you. So you can chase yourself to the good side of a low. You can get yourself out of dodge. You can stay on the front side of a system, which from a flat water, big wave standpoint is such a huge deal. So I'm really amazed at how the good people could control the weather versus the weather controlling them.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question. My next question is about reliability. The reliability of these boats seems to be improving. I mean, sure, there were a ton of issues in this race, and, most of them were manageable. The attrition rate was quite low. I mean, what do you attribute that to? Do you think it's that they are pushing harder and they can find these little sweet spots in the weather systems, or do you think it's because they have to rack up so many miles just to qualify for this thing? Is it, pushing the boats harder during something like the ocean race? Like, where do you think this somewhat newfound reliability is coming from?
Well, okay, so newfound reliability is probably a two-pronged for me. One is the engineering now and structural analysis that goes into building all this stuff is just light years ahead of where it was. I believe the Amoka class did a really nice job, even though there were tons of complaints about it, and it's kind of a fuse, if you will, the mast and everything else. It's the animal, right? So you know how you either tame it or you don't, and you kind of know when to pull back. I assume you could answer that better than any. And then the third thing was the keel decision when they went with the one design keels. It seemed like every single around the world race, there was somebody sitting in an upside down boat because their keel had broken off. So you combine a little bit of common sense, and a lot of structural analysis, and the ability to kind of chase yourself to the right side of some of these big nasty old lows. Those are probably as three good places to start as anywhere, I would imagine.
Yeah, and just for people that don't know, the mast in the Amoka 60 is a one design component. As Kenny alluded to, it is the fuse in the system. The boats are capable of creating righting moment well in excess of what the rig can handle in certain sail configurations. So, to push to the red line, you need to know where that red line is. And,
So how do you know? How did you know?
How did we know?
Yeah.
Well, these boats become little data centers, and you got load pins all over the boat. And
you trusted them.
We trusted them for the most part.
How many times are you sitting there with 5,000 alarms going off saying, screw it, ignore it?
Well, the issue is really there's no good overall measure of compression. You can get it in the aggregate from a bunch of different sensors. We had, and a fair bit of the fleet has had in the past, as part of the one design package at one point, fiber optic sensors in the leading edge of the mast and on the sidewalls. So you got to.
Did everybody have that?
It was supposed to be an implemented thing for the class. It was a bit short-lived, just the life of the fiber in the stick. But it did help you kind of figure out where it was. I hate to say that some of it comes down to feel, but it certainly does. If the boat has a crazy movement to it, the dynamic loading versus the static loading, it's a little bit seat of the pants. But certainly we took every opportunity to get every bit of information we possibly could. One, because you don't want to break, but the flip side of that is you don't want to be leaving anything on the table either. So that's the mast. The keel is also a one design part. I was on the bad end of a keel fairing incident when we launched our new boat, but the class is pretty good about amending the construction process when they run into trouble, and I think they're in a pretty safe and reliable place at this point.
It's crazy to think safe, though, when you see some of these videos of what you guys did, of what these boats are doing. For some reason, I think for most people, safe isn't the first word that comes to mind, but in many ways, they're a heck of a lot safer than they were 20 years ago. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the safety factor, the adventure factor, unfortunately we did have dismasting, in this race with Pip Hare. We had Yannick drop out at the horn, former race winner with rudder issues. Some of the standout moments come from trials, tribulation, heartache. Some of it comes from success on the water. Like, what are the big standout moments in this race for you?
Well, just to reference what I do every day is the sales part of it, right? It's the amount of experience that goes in. So first of all, let's just talk about sales, because I think that's maybe what I know slightly best, slightly enough to be dangerous.
You're taking my next question right out of my mouth, but go for it.
Well, every inventory is bespoke. So every sailor has as much input as they can or want to have to go into how they want to sail their boat. So there's literally on some of these boats, there's pure, almost like 3DI cruising inventories, which we call endurance, or just Grand Prix flat out racing inventories. And what has evolved in the sail part of it is really interesting, because in a world full of strength and weight as your two key measurements, a lot of the very best sailors in this race kind of threw the weight quotient to the side and said strength is where we're at. We want to be able to push. I want to be able to sleep. I want to be able to push this boat harder than any single-handed person has ever pushed before without the fear of breakage. So you're going into off of these crazy waves, you're still coming down the end of the wave and thinking this sail is going to be in one piece. So from a structural analysis standpoint and an overall, I think a fleet way of thinking, they all gave up plenty of weight for strength. And that has been a key component in the ability to push these boats as hard as they've been pushed.
I think that's true throughout the entire platform, not just with the engine above deck, but I think, in the class, you're seeing a movement where people are willing to spend weight for potentially reliability, but also in the case of the foils, for power.
What's the minimum weight of one of these boats?
There's no such thing, but I mean, they used to all be sub 8 ton, and now they're all up around 9 ton.
Really?
Yeah, the foils are.
Oh, there isn't a class weight limit?
No, not to the best of my knowledge, but I could go back and read it.
Did you sail one of these around the world?
I did, but
shouldn't you have known this?
We if there was, we could never get to it. We were always worried about, how little. I mean, there are equations for how much the boat weighs relative to how much is in the bulb, and there's a give and take in that relationship. But generally speaking, everybody is willing to spend weight more today than they were in the past, whether it's for reliability, or for power, because just with foiling and the speeds and the loads and the forces, it's just it's a different game. But you touched on it a little bit in terms of the customization and the inventories and what have you. But why is this race such a proving ground for North Sails?
Well, it's put any product through hell, and you learn a lot about the product. And let's face it, that's what these people do. They're nonstop. They can't afford taking sails down and fixing them. When there were 10 of us on board a Volvo boat, if we had a tear or we had a problem, it was down below. We were gluing it back together or putting a patch on it. It was back up in a few hours. That's obviously not quite so simple. But we talk a lot as an industry about the trickle-down effect from races like this, and traditionally races like this, America's Cups, the Volvos, America's Cups, and Vendées are now kind of the big three. That it is real. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but the debriefs that will happen with each of these programs and each of these skippers through 50% of the fleet, which is 50% North Sails, is real. And every detail that comes out of it will be kind of placed in the next generation of a Mocha, of whatever, of anybody's sails, of your Pearson 39 yawl sitting out here on Narragansett Bay. In some form or fashion, something will trickle to your sails. And these guys, this is just the pure testing ground of abuse. And if this stuff can make it through what these people do to them going around the world, then God bless. Your Pearson 39 yawl is going to be in good shape off of Barrington Yacht Club.
I think it's pretty cool how they do it. They have a lot of things within a Vendée cycle that are proprietary to each team, but then based on the debrief process to make sure that everybody's catching up and starting from a good baseline in the next quad. These debriefs are key, and I think the way that they manage it over there is pretty good for the individuals, but also for the health, of the class. I think it's pretty neat. In this Vendée Globe, I think the biggest aero innovation was around structure. I think the structure of the sails, creating versatility and performance, but also kind of nitpicking tape layouts and making sure that the weight was optimized where it needed to be. Some of that's from the America's Cup, some of that's through, trial and error in the offshore world. But what do you think looking forward is going to be the next big innovation?
Well, one thing that's really interesting about these sails, I think most people don't know, is there's no carbon in any of these sails. And there's a variety of reasons. It's slightly more brittle, I guess, but it's also a see-through problem, right? Now, this is a question, this is a legit question. I assume Starlink has the same features of seeing through carbon, doesn't like to look through carbon towards its satellite that the big domes had. Do you know the answer to that? Because I'm not sure.
I don't know the answer to that, but certainly in the past, with the Volvo and the Ocean Race, it's all been about Inmarsat satellite signal.
Correct.
But I can't speak to the Starlink. I can tell you that I just did a transatlantic race with live streaming of Netflix down below with some carbon sails, and so
with carbon sails.
Anecdotally, it seems okay. But
I'm not so sure carbon isn't going to start trickling into this, because I think structurally and from a durability standpoint, I remember when we made the switch from 3DL to 3DI. And everybody thought it was crazy. And we just built some sails for this was for the second Puma. Yeah, first time around was 3L sails, which we went through 3 or 4 mainsails to get around the world. Second time was 3DI, and all of a sudden it was night and day different. But 3DI was brand new, and the durability was an issue just from a structure. We were tape layouts. Structure in the tape layouts was completely off base in many cases. But we had to get through it and trial and tribulate. I think if I were starting out, I'd be looking at more carbon and in their 3DI sails and try to maybe gain some of this weight back. But I don't know. I think that's a real possibility. And then the other thing is they're going to be switching from, I think, 8 sails total down to 7. So that doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm guessing that really makes for a reconfiguration of how a lot of the headsail flying is going to be done. Like somebody's going to get super creative, because that's a big deal, right? I mean, I'm assuming that's a huge deal.
Yeah, I think.
Which sail would you leave on the dock, or do you have a gut as to how that goes?
Well, a couple things. Hopefully, it drives the inventory, to the place that it's intended, which is the actual reduction in overall sales. I'm sure it's a budget constraint, a carbon footprint constraint. I think what you'll end up having is probably the same number of specialized sails chosen for all different races on the schedule. Sure. Whether it be 2 mastheads for transatlantic or 2 fractionals for the Vendée Globe or what have you. Rules do tend to have unintended consequence. But if you're really looking to increase the versatility of a sail, something that we see in other corners of the sport is the Cunningham load, whether it's on the mainsails. We were able to find a way to do it, integrated to our jib furler. If there is a slick way to get that done on some of the prod sails, I think the sky is really the limit for what these sails can do. For some of these sails, we're asking to go upwind. We're asking these sails to go downwind. Yeah. You got J0s that you're asking to go upwind in 6 knots and downwind in 26 knots.
Have they changed the cable? Wasn't there a big cable diameter rule at one stage to go in these? Now with helix structure, obviously the cables are almost eliminated, right? Have they changed that, or is it still the same?
So it is interesting. There are modulus requirements for the cables that are, required in some of these IMOCA sails. That said, they have been a little loose on the finishing. So, a lot of sails will get finished at the head, attached to the cable, and then you'll get your cable tension through lashing. So the modulus of the cable is actually only as good as the lashing, and that presents an opportunity for me. Yeah. Whether it's a Spanish windlass or an opportunity to insert sort of Cunningham or, so I think the rule comes from a good place with good intention, but I think there's opportunity
times have moved on in many ways
for development there.
Yeah.
So that's the future of the sail stuff, or at least a glimpse into it. What do you think about the future of the IMOCA class and some of this crude sailing? We got a heap of teams already signed up for the Ocean Race Europe next year. And then we got the Round the World race, the Ocean Race in 27. Do you think this marriage, has been good for the internationalization of the class?
Well, so that's an interesting, listen, it's easy for us as ignorant Americans who speak English to kind of look for this to become a little slightly more internationalized. And nothing against speaking French. I took 7 years of French 1, so I'm fluent in French 1.
Yeah. But
I would like to see this become more international, because then I think there's real growth outside of France. France is, I don't think it'll ever be tapped out per se, but I mean, obviously there's a glut of amazing young French sailors coming out of there through their systems. But if you could key into just for example, following this race around the world, and you push on the arrow and you try to watch the videos, right? And most of the videos are people interviewing themselves in French. I would have loved to have heard a lot of that stuff. And I think a lot of people around the world would have loved to heard a lot of that stuff. So the ocean race in many ways is a potential way out of just such Frenchness to the IMOCA class, which I'm sure the IMOCA class both loves and hates at the same time. The success of the ocean race, like all ocean races, whether it was the Volvo or the Whitbread or everything else, is money. And can these French teams, in really a predominant French atmosphere right now, get French sponsors who care about selling wares in China or India or New Zealand or South America? Because that's how I found my sponsor. They wanted to sell stuff all around the world. And I think it's difficult for a French sponsor to then rationalize a large budget, probably larger. Is it fair to say it would be a larger budget than an around the world single-handed race, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So it's a large budget for what they're used to with budgets, and it is crazy global and international. And finding that money is, as you and I know, is not easy. And we're all rooting for it like crazy. And only time will tell. This is kind of the dreamer time of year, right? Everybody's like, yeah, we're doing the ocean race. We're doing the ocean race. Show me the money.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's funny you look at it like that, because it is a little bit chicken egg, because you have these French sponsors that you're trying to convince that there's this wonderful global product that they should go out and invest in. Yet on the flip side, you have all these global brands that you're trying to convince that this product in this class over here is not too French to actually become an international property worth investing in. But speaking of dreamers, you have these annual transatlantic races in France that end in either South America or the Caribbean, or God, how nice would it be to keep the boats down there and do the Caribbean 600 and then come up the East Coast of the United States and a transatlantic back to Europe. I mean, Brittany is undoubtedly seasonable. I experienced it. And the equation is definitely train all summer, do one big race in the fall, and then get back to the shed for a refit. Mm-hmm. But if there was some way to keep the circuit going, throughout the course of the year, I think certainly everybody would benefit from that. I always like to say that the I in IMOCA does stand for international, but there's only a few people holding up that end of the deal. Yeah. Okay, we've really run the gamut here. We're well past our time limit, which absolutely doesn't surprise me. Kenneth, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks to Ken for sharing his thoughts and sharing the microphone with me for this series of podcasts. Finally, I speak with the naval architect for offshore racing, Guillaume Verdier. His influence and designs run deep in the IMOCA fleet over numerous generations of boats. He collaborates incredibly close with the North Sails design team and the skippers to know this race inside and out. The perfect person to wrap up our coverage for the Vendée Globe. I connect with Guillaume Verdier in New Zealand, and we had a wonderful chat. All right, Guillaume Verdier, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time. In preparation for this conversation, I did some math, and by my calculations, you have your design fingerprints all over about 50% of this fleet. What are you most proud of when it comes to this race, the Vendée Globe?
That they finish in one piece. I mean, more or less. I mean, mostly the guys. I'm so stressed in these races. In any race, I don't want to have human accidents or injury, and I don't know why I should not carry the responsibility of such things, but it happens that you do. So you always worry for the guys, even if even if they are whatever the level of friendship or whatever, you really worry that nothing happens. And I'm always thinking I could have done something slightly better or less risky or more efficient. And really, I think first thing is that they come back. I'm proud right now that all my work when I started in 2000 under my own name, there's been no major accident that I recall.
So safety and structure seem to be paramount, which is a good thing. But, performance must be up there as well. I mean, what surprised you most about this Vendée Globe?
Well, not much of damage on the boat. It's really not too important. At the moment, I think I may be forgetting some things, but the major issue we had was linked to Maître Coq. I think the stay that broke at the top, I think, so it fell in the water. So that's due to a kind of furling system or an attachment point, chain plate at the mast that disconnected. For the cable fall in the water and cut the end that was hanging under the boat, damaged the foil and cut underneath the skin of the hull. And then we started seeing the hull peeling. So we were really not understanding what was going on because the hull was peeling close to the stern. The forestay being attached still to the hull at the bow, but was under the hull and cutting the skin. So we didn't realize it right away. I mean, but when he stopped in Punta Arenas, he saw that. I think it was Punta Arenas where he stopped. But anyway, that has been the biggest damage, and we'll probably discover some damage once they arrive. Little debone of stiffeners or frames. I don't know what. We'll see.
Maître Coq is the sister ship to our boat, a boat I know well. So it was definitely disappointing to see that for Yannick and his team. But yeah, there's been a lot of failures with furling gear across a bunch of different vendors. We were doing a transatlantic and we broke a furler, and thank God we had our J3 up, or it would have been massed down. But I think the precautions that you can take on board, are a big part of this too. And, thankfully a lot of people have learned that lesson the hard way. And, this race has had pretty good reliability.
Otherwise, yeah, you asked me my biggest surprise. I guess my biggest surprise is I would have thought that I'm surprised that they've done such a slow North Atlantic going down on such a slow South Atlantic going up. I mean, it's been slow all the way actually going up. And in spite of that, they still did 65 days or 64 days. Which I think 64 days is it?
Yeah.
Which is a lot less than last time, which was really slow. So it means next time we'll go. If by chance you can have the good meteorology all the way, it's gonna be less than I don't know, less than 60 for sure. You could do way less than 60, which becomes interesting then because it's talking with the multi-hulls.
They got pretty, lucky in the South Atlantic with the front coming across so far north, and they were able to get flat water through the, where usually they have the St. Helena High. But I mean, they were pushing the boats in the South like they certainly weren't pushing them in the last edition. Do you think that's because they've designed the boats to perform better down there, or they're more comfortable or more reliable? Why do you think they saw such high speeds in the South?
Well, I think for me, the brief of the Vendée Globe is you must arrive first at Cape Town, and that's it. Once you are first at Cape Town, you may have a chance to grab a weather system ahead of the others, and then it unfurls. And of course, it never exactly happens like that, but that's really, they go crazy to arrive first at Cape Town. That's what they did, and it was quite incredible from the equator to Cape Town. This kind of long reach was amazing. It's quite beautiful, actually. The water was flat. That's why they were trying to use all their cartridge. Flat water is quite rare to be ahead of the front, and for such a long time. I was so happy for you as well that this boat did so well in breaking the record. Plus, they seem to have fun. I think that they look quite happy. Everyone was saying our boats are going to dig in, they're not going to fight well. But I had such a bad publicity before the Vendée Globe where, I don't know, there must be some guys acting against us for advertising the fact that our boats are slow downwind and reaching, but they didn't seem to be, so I'm happy. I'm trying not to show off too much before the race. The race speaking,
let the results speak for themselves. I mean, it was a wonderful moment to see, your boat, our boat, the old boat break that record. It's always been, a very, very fast reaching boat. The foils are really powerful. And I'm, just like you said, really, really happy for Seb. But I mean, what do you think the biggest differences were, in design, call it hull shape and foil shape, between the last boats and this Vendée?
Well, this boat has a lot of capability of longitudinal righting moment, which others don't have. I mean, mostly our competitors that don't have similar longitudinal righting moment and capability to trim the boat as you want for this righting moment. And it's probably the best in this way for capability to tune the power longitudinally. So I think that's the trick. And it's got this bow which still has quite a bit of righting moment capability, but also is ejecting the water horizontally. And surely the sails, I'm always talking of what drags the boat, but because it's my part, but you'd be talking more about we are here in the North Sails talk show, so it's got to be said that the sails are surely good. And a good set of sails, it's with a combination that you discovered yourself of multiple head sails and so on. I'm not sure exactly on their configuration at the stage of when they broke the record, so I'm not going to talk too much on this because I'm not totally sure what they had. Still have to debrief. I'm gonna see them just as I'm back from New Zealand in 5 days.
And so that was kind of the jump from last generation to this generation. I mean, what do you see as like the future of the IMOCA class? Are we going to see big evolutions in hull shape? Are we going to see refinement in foil design? Obviously, you have an opinion on elevators. Like, where do you think the future is going?
Well, there's a huge capability of development that can be done, and one goes with the other. So, I mean, imagine if you could do. If we could free the architecture of the mast, for example, on the rig for like 5 years, just to reboost and relevel, the technology there, we'd do an amazing job knowing everything we've done on the America's Cup and so on. There could be a huge driving force gain there that could be allowed. So this will not happen, but there could be a huge driving force improvement to be done. We could tune the mast, be able to bend the mast, change the power of the mast, with the Cunningham. These masts are so stiff, you can do nothing with it. You can hardly rotate them as much as you want. I mean, they are limited to less than 40 degrees in rotation. You can't bend them. I'm not saying they are bad because they do the job, and that's what these guys want. But if you had the ability to change, you'd really do something. On the side of the hull, if we had the freedom to have an elevator on the rudder, which will not cost 1 million, like some of my competitors said, it will rather cost $50,000 to all the rudders we design on our boats since probably 8 years. They are capable to receive an elevator. They are designed for. So you just plug an elevator at the bottom. The mechanics system doesn't need to be changed. If you hit an object, the thing will rotate and will slow down the boat, and that's it. It's capable to take the load. Everything has been sized for that. So I don't see much of a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
It will be safer for the sailor, less prone to hurt yourself inside the boat because it will be an easier ride, more control. It's like really, it's like I don't know. Going into a plane without the tailplane, they are sailing a bit stupidly without the tail. I mean, it's a bit crazy when you start flying, but you don't have the proper tools to control it. It's a bit crazy, I find. So anyway, so this could improve a lot. Some other improvements will be in comfort, in my opinion. There's a lot of comfort to be brought on. You know that better than anyone. With, Charlie that has been hit against the Charlie Dalin on your boat that has been hurt and against the bulkhead. If we could avoid reproducing this kind of stuff, improving the comfort is also making probably smaller space when you are single-handed, so that it's or having some places where you can hold on yourself, and it's already what Charlie Dalin did, and move his location of sailing further aft so that it's closer to the center of flotation when you are half foiling, so it's moving less. Center of flotation is the 0 point of rotation of pitch, so it's where it doesn't move when you are pitching, so it's further aft than on your boat, for example. When I say your boat, it's elements are. The noise may be one which is probably harder, but there may be a way to reduce the noise. The hull shapes are going to change quite a bit, in my opinion. This is what I'm working on with the project at the moment. We probably will have slightly different hull shapes, slightly more comfortable. We try to do this. Yeah, I mean, really improving the comfort will be a major gain in performance for sure.
I mean, you touched on a lot there. I mean, the mast is, it's obviously old tech at this stage. It's one of the one design components. You definitely can't bend it. We tried a lot with Cunningham load and try to, exploit some of the new sail structures, but I think you can only put a ton on the Cunningham relative to the headboard car at the top, and there are definitely some limitations.
It's not a lot. It's nothing.
No, of course.
Yes, it's nothing. On the America's Cup, they put 13 tons, on the Cunningham.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's definitely an area of improvement. You talk about the elevators. That's an age-old debate, for sure. And you touched on some of the sail stuff. Maybe you can take us into a bit deeper into the relationship that you have kind of with the sailmakers. I mean, you guys do so much just in the loads and the drive force versus the hydrodynamics. I mean, how does that relationship work? It's months, sometimes years in the making before the boat hits the water. No?
Yeah. So we first discuss at the moment. The way it goes is that we discuss with them with the ideal sail plan in performance, and then the ideal sail plan in self-regulation, mostly for single-handed, a bit less for crew-handed, like the Volvo or the Ocean Race, sorry. And we've got interesting discussions at the moment where, when we look at the films you gave us, for example, of filmed by drone in big waves and so on, we can see that the foresails are flapping slightly when you are sliding down the wave, because you go so fast. The apparent wind comes from the front. You're reaching or downwind. You go really crazy fast. You arrive at the bottom of the wave, and then you slow down, and as you go down the wave, you design the sails so that they are slightly flappy, so that they kind of slow you down in a way. It's not really good aerodynamically, but it's practical. So you've got the luff that is deflating and slows you down, and then it reinflates once the apparent wind has turned. And it's a self-regulating device in a way. It's not been designed on purpose, but it's what happens. That's a reality. So we try to understand this better and take advantage of this and try to simulate that. And the hard stuff is to make sails that corresponds to our simulator now. So in the simulator, in the old time, we used to ask North Sails surface of response. So a surface of response is like you've got all the characteristics of the sails that is described in, force and moments according to the speed, to the heel, to the yaw, and so on. But it doesn't really include when it's not well tuned or when there's a dynamic change of apparent wind. So these things will come. It's you can understand that it's complicated to implement into a software to have something that represents not the ideal sail shape, but like the real sail shape. And if you were to measure the real sail shape, with whatever tools, cameras, or there's plenty of tools to do that. Button shape deformation or whatever. Good photos drones. If you can superimpose these ideal shapes drawn by North Sails or by whoever sail maker on what you have dynamically, this difference is probably what will lead us to make huge improvements, because we're going to either be able to avoid the sail deflating or be super automatically set up. It's really a complex subject, and you know, all the experienced sailors, they exactly know how to tune their sails and to find the average best tuning so that it does the job. And can we plan it on our side in simulation so that we can improve and so on? That's the question. It's easy to say, oh, I'm doing it and it works. It's actually not that easy.
It's easy to model and plan for perfection, but as they say, no two waves are the same. So, trying to figure out how to simulate best average settings, that's going to be important moving forward. In the drone, I mean, I can't say enough about the work that Amory did with us and just what a performance tool that has become, because, the speeds, particularly downwind, are so dynamic. You kind of have to trim for an average. You can't, it's not the America's Cup. You don't have people trimming all the time, particularly shorthanded and definitely single-handed. So if your options are over trimmed or under trimmed, you need to be kind of under trimmed for the rebuilds and to keep those high averages. But that's interesting stuff.
That's what really I like in my job is these super complex systems that needs to tune themselves, on where you don't have mechanic action or computer action necessarily to tune it. But if you can make a structure, whether it's a sail or the mast or the combined stuff, that is really smart, and makes a self-regulation. It's what we try to play on with the foils as well,
right.
With maybe the rudders. And one mechanic I love, which we don't have, was the old autopilots that our parents had on the boat. Where you have a flap at the stern of the at the back of the rudder, that will the flap will be regulated by wind stuff, and there will be a lot of mechanic, and some of them were beautiful. And I love this kind of stuff. That's really exciting me, actually, this all mechanic system that are self-regulating. But I'd like to make all the boats, kind of really self-regulating, and then you need minimum energy, electronic or whatever, to do the difference after, for the real autopilot. But we are not allowed to have this kind of stuff. But that's what is exciting in our job anyway.
It's no surprise to me that you like complicated problems. It takes an intellectual question to get you out of bed in the morning, which I think is totally cool. All right, back to this race. What stories and what characters from this particular race did you enjoy the most, and where does this Vendée Globe sit in the history books for you?
Oh, gosh, it's too wide question, my friend.
Well, it must have been cool to see Charlie win, and then you must have had some.
Oh, I'm so happy for Charlie. He's been so frustrated last time to be pushed second, and we kept that's the first time I called the team all the time to try to know what's going on. Are you okay? I try not to disturb the team normally, or Charlie. And so we kept really excited, and also with Seb Simon, we were texting, and this has changed, but already since last time, the guys are, just saying hi. Everything is fine on board. They understood that I'm a bit worried for them, so they are kind enough now to text me on WhatsApp, maybe quite regularly, or they text with some of the guys in my team, and it's very, very kind of them to do so, and not only when they break, because it's a lot of work we put into these boats. On they become friends by the time, of course, like we became friends. And so no, we had good contact with Seb, but also a little bit Paul Meyer, and I don't know, just to say hi from time to time, or I like the boat, or it's going well, or I'm tired. But otherwise, I didn't have the big change for me is that I didn't have some phone calls of I lost like three ribs on one frame. It's broken. I've got to fix it on these big waves, and then I start stressing like crazy. So I didn't have any of this, which is for me something new, because all the Vendée Globe I had before were much more stressful for me. So it's a good one. That's where I rank it. No, not stressful for me.
It's funny. No news is good news is a tough philosophy to adopt when you know so much is going on out there. So it's nice to communicate even when times are good. I think that's the lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. And Boris Herman has been texting to me quite often, which is funny because it's not my boat, but he was really kind. He was saying, your boat is going really well. I'm happy for you. And it's funny because I kind of like each other with Boris. And I'm not his architect, but I like the guy. He's having a nice philosophy of selling. He's a great seller as well.
Boris is he loves the chat, and he's a good, genuine guy. I remember quite vividly. He was almost a client of yours. We had a little meeting, and you did the demonstration with the spoon under the sink for Boris. The relationship that the naval architect has with the sailors is of utmost importance. And, I know, Charlie's selected you now 2 Vendée Globes in a row. And I think that's because of trust and confidence. And, I can say based on our relationship that's for good reason. So that's cool. That's cool. And I guess finally, Guillaume, like what projects do you have on the horizon that you're excited about?
And so I do a very interesting project with DMG Mori. They're doing a project for the ocean race. I'm not quite sure who will be on the boat. Maybe you. I don't know. It's not really known yet. So scientifically very interesting, and I discovered new people and really, really kind. I've been amazed by the kindness of Kojiro and how he's been welcoming us, and his professionalism is impressive. So I'm really happy to have discover this new team. For sure, there'll be things coming up with Charlie Dalin, or I'm not quite sure what's their budget project development, but we'll have a lot of time to try to improve the boats we have at the moment. I don't need to have 50 projects. I don't want, actually. 1 or 2 is fine. So I'm just waiting a bit wondering for the ocean race. That should have started a little bit earlier. I think I wonder what's going on for the ocean race. If there are serious team engaging, it needs to be done quite soon. Let's put it this way.
No, for sure. It's getting to be no pun intended, the 11th hour for new boats in the next ocean race. But it's about to be silly season, as they say, for the next Vendée Globe. So I'm sure your plate will be full in no time. Guillaume, thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. It was great to chat and catch up, and look forward to seeing what's next.
Thank you, Charlie. It's a great pleasure always talking to you, and you always give me a kind of insight on where to go as well in my professional life. So it's good. Thanks to you.
You're kind to say that. Thank you, Guillaume. Take care.
Bye.
So there you go. Thank you for joining me on this wild ride that is the Vendée Globe. And a huge thank you to all the guests who we spoke to over the series. North Sails are the driving force behind offshore racing. powering the winner to a record victory and remaining the sailmaker of choice for the IMOCA fleet, seeking unparalleled performance and durability. So it was a pleasure and an honor to go behind the scenes with the characters at the heart of this Vendée Globe, both on the water and on land. I hope I shared my passion for offshore racing. North Sails works incredibly close with the skippers and teams, as they do with all their clients, to provide a world-class service and product. That was my aim with this series, and I hope it was fun and informative along the way, shining a light on a phenomenal event. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from me before the next Vendée Globe in 2028. Fair winds to all, and wishing everyone the best for the remainder of 2025.